He had been learning magic since he was young until one day he was banished from his party because they thought he was weak, when in fact he was the strongest SS rank warrior. A young boy sits by the river quietly fishing when a wizard suddenly appears and asks if he'd like to learn magic. Though confused, the boy eagerly agrees and the sorcerer Eldest begins training him, explaining that someday he'll have companions whose lives will depend on his magic. Magic, Eldest says, is simply turning one's breath into something special. When the boy releases his first spell and hits the target, he beams with pride despite the exhausting day. Eldest praises him, noting that what others take a month to learn he mastered in a single day. But training ends there. The impatient child pouts, wanting to learn more, but his master reminds him that those who rush eat their food raw, suggesting they catch a fish before sunset. Eldest hopes to relax the boy's mind, though Alec keeps insisting on more practice. Smiling, the wizard tells him he has a natural gift for magic and will surely become a great sorcerer, but he must let time flow as calmly as the river before them. Curious, Alec asks why the wizard chose to teach him, but before Eldest can reply, his fishing line suddenly jerks. He's caught something. Eldest and Alec focused on the catch, though Eldest clearly had no idea what to do next. The boy teased the adult for being brilliant with spells but hopeless at fishing. After some struggle and a clumsy fall, they finally caught the fish and burst into laughter. The following day, Alec tried to master a magic formula and Eldest told him that once he grasped the pattern behind it, things would become easier. They spent hours studying together, making steady progress until Snowfall turned their lesson into a snowball fight. Alec cherished every moment with his master. But one day, Eldest told him he was leaving the capital and advised him never to become a court mage if he had the chance. Confused, Alec asked why Eldest had taught him magic at all. The wizard revealed it was to repay a favor owed to Alec's late mother. Years later, while studying at the Royal Academy of Magic, Alec discovered from the archives that Eldest had once been the Academy's most brilliant student before being banished as a court mage. Realizing the source of his teacher's sorrow, Alec vowed to reform the court to honor his mentor's kindness. Yet to do that, he would first have to become a court mage himself, a path that fate would make far crueler than he ever imagined. After becoming one of the court's magicians, Alec was dismissed from his group by Prince Regulus of Galdana. Lenny and Ix laughed as the prince expelled him, claiming Alec failed to protect him properly. During missions, Regulus led the charge, Lenny attacked with fire magic, and Ix absorbed blows, leaving Alec to handle only defense and enchantments. Pathetic, they said, for a court mage. When Alec tried to explain, his teammates called him a coward who always avoided deeper dungeon levels. Lenny, who had kept quiet because the prince had assigned Alec to them, finally declared she refused to explore with a useless loser. Though Regulus admitted Alec had excelled at the academy, he said the mage had become nothing but dead weight. He took Alec's dagger, reminding him that commoners couldn't carry weapons, and accused him of acting independently. Finally, Regulus tore off his robe, saying he didn't deserve the title. Stunned and humiliated, Alec could only watch as his team walked away. But even then, he didn't give up and continued to study and improve. After learning that the prince couldn't use magic, Alec decided to make up for his highness's weakness, hoping it would let him serve his old group again. Deep down, he still wished to return and prove his worth. But soon, reality began to shut its doors on him, literally. The next day, when he tried to enter the capital, the guards stopped him, saying that without his court mage title, he was just another commoner. In the middle of the commotion, Lenny appeared to back them up, repeating that commoners weren't allowed inside. She even mocked him, saying she'd heard he'd broken the royal dungeon record from level 37 to 60 back in the academy, but was still just a boaster in her eyes. When she turned to leave, Alec pleaded with her to deliver a letter to the king, reminding her he had joined Regulus's team under royal orders. Lenny took the letter, tore it to pieces before his eyes, and closed the gate, crushing the last of his hope. Standing there on the empty street, Alec reflected on his 4 years as a court mage and asked Eldest for forgiveness for failing to change the imperial court. As he lingered in thought, someone suddenly embraced him warmly. Looking up, he saw a bright smile. It was Yora, his old friend. After 4 years apart, Alec and Yora quickly caught up. He shared his struggles and she finally understood his gloom. Yora confessed she'd always hated Galdana's rigid class system and was glad he'd left the court. Keeping her old promise, she invited Alec to join her in dungeon adventures. Though he hesitated, haunted by being cast out as useless, Yora just laughed, saying she needed no one but Alec Igret, unless he preferred crawling back to the court. Moved, he took her hand, and together they joined the A-ranked group lasting period. The next morning, Alec dreamed of Eldest warning him not to become a court mage before the carriage's jolt woke him. As they rode toward Fizzle, Yora urged him to rest for the long journey ahead. Meanwhile, in the capital, Prince Regulus learned Alec had vanished. Lenny said it had been 5 days and that rumors claimed he turned adventurer. Regulus sneered, calling Alec a coward for fleeing despite once being hailed a prodigy. Lenny cheered that they no longer had to drag that useless man around, and now with Lord Vaughan from Duke Fornius' house, their dungeon conquest would surely bring Regulus fame. Hours later, Alec and Yora arrived in Fizzle, the city of dungeons and their team's base. Before joining the expedition, Alec had to register at the Adventurers Guild, but the receptionist rejected him for lacking a city pass and proper licenses, which required 2 years of experience. Yora protested, saying Krasia had promised to handle it, but the clerk said she'd been rude and unhelpful. Frustrated, Yora blamed herself for trusting her and took a bite of her sandwich, muttering that their team had already reached level 52. They couldn't afford to wait 2 years. After swallowing the sandwich, Yora stopped complaining and shifted her thoughts to finding other dungeons to explore. Since they were in the city of dungeons, she figured they could start with an easier one to warm up. Standing up, she welcomed Alec to Fizzle, hoping he'd enjoy the place. As night fell, they entered a forest swarming with flying insects. Yora cast an enhancement spell to boost Alec's speed and strength, allowing him to take down several enemies swiftly. But soon, a larger swarm appeared, clearly panicked by something that had disturbed their nest. Yora raised her magic shield and moved to face them alone, while Alec, drained from his time away from magic after being expelled from the court, struggled to cast spells and fought hand-to-hand. Seeing Yora in danger, he forced himself to focus and released a powerful fire spell that burned through the swarm. Regaining confidence, he resumed fighting as Yora shielded him. Despite being outnumbered, their teamwork shone through. Yora strengthened her barrier while Alec summoned a storm of lightning that annihilated the insects. Just as they caught their breath, a massive earthworm erupted from the ground, seizing Yora's scepter in its jaws and lifting it high into the air. Instead of falling into despair, Alec remembers that his partner is the best support mage in the academy, and she answers that her comrade is the finest attack sorcerer. Both agree that the only one drunk here is the worm, and Alec Egret summons a massive fire tornado that engulfs the monster. Yora shields herself from the scorching heat as Alec's flames obliterate the earthworm. Victorious, they praise each other's performance, and Yora laughs, saying her friend hasn't changed at all. The scene shifts to a dungeon where a lancer's spear fails to pierce a monster's hard shell. As the Hydra lunges to devour him, his teammate's arrow saves the day, though the lancer still complains. The creature retaliates with a fireball, but Yora raises an ice wall to block it, then counters an electric sphere with a wall of earth. Overwhelmed by the relentless attacks, she starts to falter until Alec arrives and unleashes a devastating spell that annihilates the Hydra instantly. With that victory, the archer announces they cleared the 68th floor, setting a new dungeon record. To celebrate, the 4 companions shout their team's name, lasting period, vowing to write their everlasting story together. To the Magical Academy, where they were celebrated as the most outstanding batch in years. Their instructor, Rosa, could tell there was something special about them. Their teamwork and harmony were unmatched. Though they came back from the dungeons with bruises and cuts, their smiles showed pride, having shattered the all-time record by conquering the level 68 dungeon, far surpassing the previous record holders who only reached the 32nd floor. When graduation day arrived, Rosa announced the results. Rain ranked 4th, Krasia 3rd, Yora 2nd, and Alex stood at the top as class valedictorian, achieving the highest scores in recent history. Filled with joy and laughter, they teased their instructor and got playfully scolded for it. As they left the academy together, other students watched in awe, believing they were witnessing the birth of a future legendary party. But soon after, Alex shocked his teammates by revealing he didn't wish to continue as an adventurer and instead planned to become a court magician. Though surprised, they understood it was a safer job with stable pay. Despite their disappointment, they never held it against him and sincerely wished him the best. Yora once promised they'd reunite as teammates, and that promise now comes true as she and Alex celebrate in a bar. After one drink, Yora becomes blackout drunk, ranting about not being allowed into deeper dungeons before passing out on the bench. Smiling, Alex covers her with his jacket, recalling her similar antics back in the academy. A man in the bar, clearly hostile toward SS ranks and obsessed with his Sigma grind, mocks Alec as a beta male. Alec ignores him, but the man, an Andrew Tate fanboy, snaps and tries to smash a bottle over Alec's head. Alec calmly blocks it with a mana shield. Amused to finally get his attention, the man admits he knows Alec is a court magician and didn't expect someone like him to chase an adventurer's life. Then, to Alec's surprise, the burly man places an adventurer's pass on the table, saying it's an apology for the earlier test, but adds a condition: Alec must demonstrate his magic to claim it. Alec is still puzzled when Yora groggily wakes up, calling the man Guildmaster and asking what he's doing there. Confused, Alec wonders why the Guildmaster would just hand him a pass, but the man casually does so and leads them to the underground training area, where he tests parties aiming to level up. He tells Alec to show his strength. Yorha warns it's not the best time since Alec's been drinking, but Alec insists he still has enough mana. The guildmaster introduces himself as Liviel, and Alec immediately recalls he's a former S-rank mage. Liviel laughs, calling those days a blur, then explains this simple condition. Alec just needs to impress him with magic. They prepare a spar. Alec starts with thunderbolt magic, but Liviel easily dodges encounters with water magic, forcing Alec to dodge as well. Realizing Liviel's range advantage, Alec shifts to close combat, but Liviel enhances himself with reinforcement magic, moving at blinding speed. He circles Alec and lands a powerful punch that Alec barely blocks with his mana shield. The shield shatters under the impact, sending Alec crashing into the wall. Liviel, impressed by his endurance, notes that few could survive such a hit. Alec emerges from the dust, acknowledging Liviel as a true S-ranked adventurer. Liviel, expecting fear, is surprised by Alec's calmness. Alec admits he keeps forgetting he's no longer a rule-bound court magician limited to defense. Now he's free to unleash his full power. Liviel laughs and challenges him to go all out. Alec transforms his staff into a magic blade as Liviel hurls water balloons again, but Alec dodges and tricks him by faking an attack. When Liviel charges with boosted speed, Alec triggers a trap, striking him with lightning before slicing through him. Liviel, momentarily still, praises Alec's strength but isn't finished. He activates his trump card, dragon-scale gauntlets that amplify his power, and charges. Alec barely evades as Liviel's punch creates a crater. Undeterred, Alec fires another lightning spell, which Liviel shrugs off without flinching. Liviel charges through the attack and swings at Alec, who blocks with his shield but is pushed back. Thinking of how to handle the monster, Alec braces as Liviel activates his gauntlet's healing ability. Knowing a long fight favors Liviel, Alec goes on the offensive, slashing nonstop. Liviel blocks every strike, mocking Alec to do better. Alec fires back with taunts, angering the guildmaster, who throws a powerful punch that Alec dodges, countering swiftly. Furious, Liviel smashes the wall as Alec slips beneath, only for Liviel to keep pressing. Alec blocks and aims for a decisive hit, but Liviel endures and retaliates with a double-handed strike that fills the air with dust. When it clears, Alec stands unhurt and attacks again, only for his body to suddenly weaken. He's out of mana and collapses. Yorha rushes to heal him with regeneration magic. Then Rain appears, teasing Liviel for using his strongest move on a lower-ranked fighter. Irritated, Liviel snaps that he was only testing Alec's limits and would pass him anyway. Rain carries Alec to a room so he can rest and sits oddly on his legs while they talk about how long it's been since they were together. Suddenly, the receptionist bursts in saying she needs the guildmaster, but Liviel drags her out. Rain then grabs some booze and asks Yorha to explain what happened to Alec. As she finishes, Rain trembles with rage, learning Alec's party made him carry their gear, handle inventory, restricted his magic to defense only, and forbade him from using even a dagger. Shocked, Rain asks how Alec managed defensive magic since he was terrible at it in the academy. Yorha explains Alec trained from scratch until his defense magic nearly matched hers. Furious that Alec was still called worthless and exiled despite protecting the crown prince, Rain crushes the bottle in anger, waking Alec. Seeing Rain surprises him, and Yorha cheerfully says the guildmaster granted permission, making Alec excited to join higher-level dungeons. But Rain says that can wait. First, they need revenge. They plan to sneak into the royal city, infiltrate the palace, and beat the prince's party, but Alec refuses, and Yorha reminds them that fighting others is forbidden. Alec pats Rain's shoulder, saying he's content just enjoying their adventure, no longer caring about the court. Rain then declares they should become the strongest party in the world, which would surely anger the prince and let them reject any future pleas for help. Alec agrees, seeing it as the perfect compromise. Meanwhile, the injured S-ranked adventurer Krista is treated by a receptionist as the guildmaster calls an emergency meeting, summoning all A-ranked adventurers for a rescue mission on the 64th floor. Back in Alec's room, he meets Krasia, whose dual personalities have matured. When asked why he's not at the meeting, he replies he's unranked. She heals him instantly with magic, raising questions about why bandages were used on Krista. Yorha and Rain burst in, excited about the rescue mission, explaining that magic can be used on that floor, leaving adventurers reliant on potions. Since the S-rank team was wiped out, Krista was sent alone for help. Alec asks Krasia if she's fine with it, but she protests, saying Rain forced the decision. They argue until Yorha says it's Alec's choice since he'll face the main boss. Alec accepts, and as they stand before the dungeon entrance, Rain proclaims this will be the beginning of their party's legend. They arrive at the dungeon entrance where heal and magic is nullified, forcing them to rely solely on potions and agility to survive. Krasia's teammates are trapped near the level 64 boss, but clearing every floor beforehand would take too long. Rain points this out, but Yorha reveals a magic crystal from Krasia, capable of teleporting them straight to level 64. Alec recognizes it as a rare item, yet Krejcia's only concern is rescuing her guildmates. Yora warns that the level 64 boss is an undead, rendering Krejcia ineffective, and since she's a support mage, Alec will have to handle most of the fight. Rain advises him to conserve mana and let him deal with weaker enemies, not wanting Alec drained before the boss. Krejcia cautions that this dungeon is death itself, and even S-ranked adventurers fell here. Instead of faltering, Rain's excitement grows. He declares that their legend begins now. Yora then throws the crystal into the air, and in an instant, they're teleported to level 64, a dark cave where skeletal warriors rise from the ground, weapons in hand. Rain showed no fear as he drew his black spear and charged at the skeletons, cutting them down effortlessly while boasting that level 64 felt too easy. More skeletons appeared, but he continued slashing through them without hesitation. Yora grew worried when he moved out of her support range and ran after him, calling his name. Krejcia reassured her, saying Rain would be fine since his ancient artifact, the piercing black spear, was nearly indestructible and perfect for someone as reckless as him. Alec offered to help, but Rain laughed it off, calling the fight child's play. Alec smiled and followed until he suddenly sensed a strange presence behind him. Instinctively, he fired a lightning bolt, but when the dust settled, nothing was there. Confused, he mentioned it might have been a false alarm, then suddenly drew his sword and slashed the air. His strike met resistance as an invisible force blocked it, revealing itself to be the Grim Reaper. Rain grinned, teasing that Alec wasn't as rusty as he thought, admitting he had sensed the enemy but wasn't skilled at fighting invisible foes. The Grim Reaper countered, forcing Alec back before launching another attack that Alec barely managed to deflect as he leaped beside Rain. Alec felt Rain's trust and confidence in him, a bond he hadn't experienced in years, which reignited his spirit. With renewed energy, he leaped into the air, his magic sword slicing clean through the Grim Reaper. Turning to Yora, he asked if she'd known about Rain's plan. She quickly apologized, while Krejcia told him to take it up with Rain since it was his idea. Alec just smiled, promising to repay Rain someday, to which Rain replied they had to survive the dungeon first. The four regrouped, ready to fight. Alec and Rain charged ahead, cutting through waves of undead as Yora boosted them with spells. Rain fought with flair, cutting down skeletons while Krejcia covered him with precise arrows. As the endless waves pressed in, Alec called everyone back and unleashed a massive thunderbolt, obliterating the horde in one strike. When the dust settled, Rain asked why Alec only used thunder magic. He remembered the days when Alec wielded many kinds of spells at the academy. Alec excuses himself, claiming Thunderbolt is the fastest spell to cast, but Rain senses he's hiding something and lets it go due to their limited time. A monstrous roar echoes ahead, likely from the boss room, prompting Rain to prepare. After Yora casts reinforcement magic, he dashes forward faster than Yusuzane, with Alec and the two girls following close behind. They emerge into an open area where Rain sits atop a ledge, watching a giant monster chase a bowl-cut adventurer. Alec wants to help, but Rain recognizes the man as Loki from the Rechroma party, known for being arrogant. Krejcia confirms Loki is a crafty support magician, though Alec doubts it as Loki screams for help, threatening to haunt Rain if he dies. Rain ignores him until Loki trips, seemingly doomed. Alec readies to intervene, but Krejcia stops him, saying this is Loki's style. Moments later, a trap spell triggers beneath the monster, erupting in lava. Shocked, Alec watches as more traps ignite, bombarding the creature with fire while Krejcia remarks that Loki truly is a cunning magician. Loki laughs at the monster for tripping, calling it an idiot until its furious roar and a charged magical blast wipe the grin off his face. Realizing death is seconds away, he braces for the end, but Rain saves him just in time. Shocked to still be alive, Loki watches as Alec and the girls join the fight. When the monster attacks Alec, Yora blocks it with her shield. Alec counters with a thunder spell, yet the creature redirects its rage toward Rain and Loki. Alec shouts a warning and fires another bolt, but it barely slows the beast. Seeing it closing in, Rain dashes forward, slipping beneath its legs to distract it, then hurls Loki toward Krejcia. Yora orders Krejcia to get Loki to safety while Rain readies his spear. Once Krejcia confirms Loki's safe, Yora empowers Rain with her magic. Rain charges, dodges the monster's attacks, and leaps high to strike its face with his spear. The monster thrashes violently, flinging him to the ground. As it moves to crush him, Yora shields Rain at the last moment, buying him enough time to rise again for the final stand. Alec acted like a conductor in an orchestra, forming 5 magic circles around the monster. Loki remarked that even 3 were hard to make, but Alec was already pushing past limits. To her astonishment, he expanded the number to 20. As the monster charged, Rain leaped onto its back and stabbed its tail, buying Alec time to complete his spell. He jumped clear just as Alec unleashed a surge of thunderbolts that paralyzed the creature. When Alec tried to deliver the final blow, the monster dodged and began charging its own magic. Krasia quickly cast a blinding spell, and Yoro followed with chains of magic to hold it down. Seizing the moment, Rain hurled his spear like a javelin, piercing the monster's head. Yet even mortally wounded, it tried one last desperate blast. Alec stood firm, invoking a spell known only to him and his master, Elders. As the monster's attack flew toward him, Alec used reflection magic, sending it back with twice the force. Incredibly, the monster endured, barely alive, and began charging again. Alec combines his reflection magic with multiple magic circles, trapping the beast in a blazing inferno that reduces it to ashes. Rain ends it by slicing the monster's head in half. Their brief celebration is interrupted when Loki appears, thanking Alec and noting he's the court magician. Alec replies he left that position, to which Loki calls it the prince's loss. Then Loki shocks everyone by revealing the creature wasn't the real floor boss, but a sub-boss foolish enough to chase him and get isolated. The group is stunned, realizing how powerful the true boss must be. Loki explains the sub-boss was a necromancer disguised as a black-armored knight, resistant to physical attacks. Turning to Alec, he presents a wand with a cross-shaped head, an ancient artifact that transforms into a sword in Alec's hands. Rain doubts Loki's generosity, asking why he gives such a relic away. Loki just laughs, saying Alec will be bait in the vanguard. The others are confused until he explains that Alec's weak appearance will lure the boss in, letting them ambush it and claim the glory of defeating an S-ranked monster. As Alec and his team battle for survival in the dungeons, the prince and his party face their own struggle in another dungeon across the continent. Unlike Alec's group, who move skillfully and defeat powerful foes, the prince's team scrambles in panic from a swarm of caterpillar monsters. Confused, the prince wonders why such weak creatures now feel impossible to handle when they used to be mere warm-ups. He orders his mage to attack, but she breaks down crying instead. Furious, he calls them useless and charges ahead, vowing to slay the monsters himself. His sword bounces off their hardened skin, and a single hit from one of them sends him crashing to the ground, forcing his party to drag him to safety. As they flee, the prince feels his body sluggish and his sword unbearably heavy. It dawns on him that everything changed after he expelled Alec, the court magician whose support magic had secretly amplified their strength. Yet instead of realizing the truth, the prince convinces himself that Alec must have cursed him in revenge. After returning to the palace and being treated by his physicians, the prince immediately summons his mage, Vogan, to examine what curse might be afflicting him. After a brief inspection, Vogan concludes there is no curse at all. The prince refuses to believe it, insisting on a red check, claiming it's impossible for him to struggle against a mere level 30 monster when he's conquered floors beyond level 40. Vogan calmly suggests the difficulty could stem from the lack of magical support. The remark wounds the prince's pride, and he arrogantly declares that support magic is worthless, something only weak adventurers rely on. Knowing better than to argue with his ignorant master, Vogan merely asks if Alec hadn't warned them that reinforcement spells fail on the 30th floor. The prince scoffs, dismissing Alec as a mere peasant unworthy of belief. Vogan, however, reminds him that Alec once belonged to the legendary party that reached floor 68 before graduation. The prince laughs it off, calling such feats peasant fantasies meant to comfort the weak. Realizing it's pointless to continue, Vogan falls silent just as a messenger enters, announcing that the king has summoned the prince to discuss matters concerning Alec, the former court mage. The prince rises and heads to the court with Vogan, where he finds his father seated on the throne and asks what he wishes to discuss. The king brings up the court mage named Eldas, whom the prince barely remembers from childhood. The king explains that Eldas, once a noble and royal mage, was outspoken against discrimination and urged reform in the kingdom's system. Enraged by such defiance, the king had stripped him of his titles and banished him. The prince laughs, calling the mage a fool for speaking that way to a king. With a sorrowful look, the king reveals that Eldas later enrolled in the Magic Academy as a commoner, excelled beyond all expectations, and returned to court purely through merit. Even then, he kept pressing for fair treatment of commoners, one of whom had even saved the king's life, until he mysteriously vanished. The prince, puzzled by his father's tale, asks why he's telling him this, and the king finally states that the time has come to reform the kingdom and seek out gifted commoners like Alec. The prince was stunned, calling Alec a worthless commoner unfit for anything. But the king revealed a torn parchment Alec had left behind, showing a full map of the 30th floor with every monster and method of clearing it. The king explained that only someone who had conquered that floor multiple times could write it with such precision. Shocked, the prince argued that seeking a commoner's help went against everything his father had taught him. Lowering his gaze, the king admitted his mistakes and vowed to change, declaring that from now on, merit would matter more than status. The prince, unable to accept it, excused himself from court, claiming illness. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Loki discussed tactics with the group, telling Alec to rely solely on the sword he'd given him and avoid using magic. Confused, Alec protested that the monster was immune to physical damage, making a sword useless. Kreja then realized Loki's intent to deceive the boss into believing Alec was a swordsman, not a mage, but she remained unsure why it mattered, since the monster would attack anything it saw anyway. Loki confidently insists the monster is not only intelligent but a skilled sword master capable of planning ahead. Alec is shocked yet eager to see such a creature himself. They agree on the plan, though the boss room remains far. Loki, however, proposes teleportation. Yora panics, reminding them that teleportation magic is highly restricted to top officials, but Rain suspects Loki could have stolen it. As Loki draws a magic circle, Alec and Yora quietly plan to blame him if things go wrong. Alec still doubts Loki, yet Yora admits that while he's untrustworthy, he's reliable. 2 years ago, Loki led a raid on a high-ranking dungeon without casualties, and his party's leader is known for his integrity. Reassured, Alec smiles and prepares for battle. When Loki finishes the circle, they step onto it as the ground glows purple. Yora is stunned to see the spell actually works, and Loki warns them to stay sharp. They're teleporting straight into the boss room. They crash onto Rain and quickly spot a massive dark knight clashing with a party of 3. The mage shouts for one member to get help, saying they'll need at least a rank and mage to survive. The girl runs off while the small fighter attacks, but his strike is blocked, and the mage's fire spells barely scorch the knight's armor. Realizing they're hopelessly outmatched, the elf hesitates until Rain dashes past with blinding speed, thrusting his spear at the knight. The monster parries and shoves him back, thrilling Rain with its strength. Alec tries to strike from behind, but the knight leaps away and retaliates, forcing a fierce exchange of blows. As Kreja and Loki drag the injured adventurers to safety despite interference from 2 newcomers, the floor boss shows no weakness, driving Rain and Alec into exhaustion. Thinking fast, Rain charges again, baiting the knight to leap, and pins its cloak to the floor with his spear. Alec seizes the moment and, with one precise swing, decapitates the knight as its body collapses lifelessly to the ground. Just when Alec's group thought the battle was over, the knight's body regenerated and stood headless, advancing toward them. Alec realized it was a headless rider, and the giant creature they'd slain earlier must have been its mount. The knight suddenly charged with blinding speed, its blow barely blocked by Alec, who would died otherwise. Rain leaped in to counterattack, and together they pushed it back. The knight then grabbed its severed head, reattaching it with a surge of dark power before striking Alec again, sending him crashing into a wall. Yora's shield saved him, and after drinking a healing potion, he switched with Rain to recover. The fight raged on while Loki quietly prepared his plan. When Loki finally revealed himself, the arena flared with purple light, terrifying the knight once it realized Loki was a mage, its only true weakness. It dashed forward, cutting Loki down before Alec could react, but the body vanished. It had been an illusion. The trick placed the knight right where Loki wanted, freezing it in icicles. Rain teleported behind it, stabbing before retreating as another fighter joined in. The enraged knight broke free and scaled the wall like a spider, charging at Loki, but then turned toward Kreja. Loki intercepted with a magic blade, holding it off while Yorna bound it with enchanted chains. Though not a warrior, Loki endured long enough for the spell to hold, collapsing afterward and telling Alec to finish the creature with his strongest magic. If you're enjoying the journey of this series, please hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All of your support helps me to keep bringing more high-quality recaps.